Just want to talk a little bit about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, man, JP.
You a Jordan Peterson man?
Mm-hmm.
Well, both of you are
Nice.
He's a genius, that man.
very smart, so smart.
Ahead of his time.
His background in the sciences and as a clinician, it's like it's given him definites, and from that, he's able to just make things so clear. So he communicates so clearly because he understands the flow so clearly. If this is missing, then that's missing.
Well, did you hear him talk about his process for writing his first book? What was it? Maps of Meaning?
Mhm.
He said that every sentence in the whole entire book he had written like 20 times or 15 different versions or more of the sentence until he found the exactly right one. I mean, that's how meticulous he is.
That's a long book, man. Let me tell you, if like you took what he actually wrote and condensed it into a book, that's a lot of writing. That's a lot of thought.
Yeah, that's how meticulous he is about communication. That's why he's so careful about his word. Look at how, when the writing of that book, it shows how meticulous he is about his words.
Their words have meaning. Good for him.
What about his debates with Sam Harris? What do you think of those?
Which one is Sam Harris?
He's the really one of the most famous atheists there are, I guess. I mean, him, Christopher Hitchens, and Richard Dawkins, to me, are the really outspoken atheists. So I think what intrigued Sam Harris is because he was really impressed with Jordan Peterson's knowledge and his whole approach to so many topics, but was perplexed by the fact that he's a Christian. And that's what I think drew Sam Harris to the debate. And that set me off. Well, so I was following Jordan Peterson as well. And then it led me to those debates, which led me down other rabbit trails.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, Brian. It was a while ago.
But Sam Harris is a brilliant, brilliant guy. I mean, he's very articulate too. And a different, that's the interesting thing is that they say brevity. What's that saying about brevity? Like when you really understand something, you're able to use fewer words to convey it.
The more concise you can communicate,
yeah. Sam Harris is one of
it.
those. Yeah.
Nice.
So I felt that Sam Harris might have narrowly won the debate, but he won it. And I'm not an atheist, so I don't like to see the atheists win a debate. But I thought he narrowly won the debate against Jordan, and that led me down different rabbit trails, following different other YouTube people. So my story about him is a little different because it's where it took me. You know, I started with him and then it led me down here and then I followed here and there. You know, I have a whole bunch of different things I would talk about that don't directly relate to him, but how it's like he was the springboard for the direction I went. Yeah, the masculine feminine roles that, Corey talks about in his book and that you're talking about, you talk about it the same way. It's very similar to what Jordan Peterson talks about a lot too. It sounds like, yeah. I mean, he would probably love to have you on his podcast.
well, it's interesting.
That would be good for you too. Might as well.
Because seeing how he moves his body, seeing his tone that he expresses, and the stories that he tells, I have a pretty good idea of his physical and structural tension patterns that he has.
Oh yeah, you being a chiropractor. Yeah, so that's interesting. So you watch that, you observe that in people, and that tells you something.
What did you see?
Well, I don't know if it's okay for me to share. Is it okay for me to share what I'm observing?
Yeah, what you observe. Why not?
So he's talked a lot about how his in the past when he's spoken, he's got like emotionally charged. And you see some of his earlier videos how he gets triggered easily. Like you can tell he gets a visceral charge on it.
He's almost like hypomanic in a way.
There's also, then he talks about how him and especially his daughter has autoimmune challenges,
right,
with the rheumatoid. So that's all problems exist at a certain consciousness. So from looking at his posture and his structural distortion, listen to what he says and how he says it, and then having it be confirmed by what's been going on in the health of the family, it's I'm pretty certain that I know exactly what would show up as far as his structural distortion and his tension patterns.
As far as if you were working on him.
Oh yeah, I already know how I would work on him.
So what does that mean? In layman's terms.
Yeah,
right, in layman's terms, right.
So I'm not sure if it's
because
cool to share.
There's been a lot of pushback against him, especially people on the right, because when Kavanaugh was being confirmed for the Supreme Court, he was like, "Oh, Kavanaugh should just resign." Yeah, that's good for everybody.
Who said that?
Peterson said that. He tweeted it out on Twitter, which I was like, "That's bullshit." The guy's being
So
challenged.
he should cave when he's challenged.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's
I didn't
not
agree with that
masculine.
at all, and he got savaged for that. But then again, he lives in the kind of the Hollywood bubble. He's represented by CAA, or the biggest talent agency in the world,
And was that him that tweeted that, or was it one
No,
of
that was
his
him.
employees?
that was him.
Yeah, I mean, I've said things plenty of times that I wish
The
I
point
could.
being is he's
Yeah.
gotten pushback.
I mean, am I the only one that said things?
He
I was
said,
like,
he
I
said,
should've thought
I've
that
heard Jordan Peterson say in the very beginning when he was interviewed, and people were asking him, what he thought about his great success, like how much attention he's gotten in YouTube and had the fame.
huge following.
And he said, "Yeah, well, I'm ready at any minute for it to end. I could say," and then the interviewer asked, "Well, why? Well, I could say something wrong."
You're not allowed to say anything.
Yeah. He said, "I could very easily say something wrong. I'm conscious of that at all times."
And everything that he says is recorded. So it's like when he's being interviewed, there's zero room for error, and anything he says can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Well,
right?
Christopher Hitchens was interviewed too, and he was asked about what he thought of his whole YouTube fame. And he said that one of the secrets is to always make your answers very short. They're going to turn it into a snippet anyway. If you make it short, then.
So what do you see? What's the bottom line?
Is it
You
cool?
can't throw it out there and they go, "Oh, well, I'm not going to tell you." It's like, why bring it up then?
So like off the air, is it cool? Like do you think it's appropriate and you think it's ideal to share how the guy's wired?
Because you brought it up, and it's interesting because obviously a big part of my work, which you've learned, is body language, how you read people's body language.
There's a psychiatrist I follow.
Let me finish. What insight do you glean with your expertise just looking at his body language?
So Jordan Peterson obviously has what we call a phase 5 pattern, postural distortion, consciousness distortion. So what that means is, from what I've observed with Jordan Peterson, is that the top vertebra, the top two, have a lot of tension, which causes the head to go forward. It's a state of fear and anticipation. It's almost as if
shit's about to go sideways.
It's the consciousness of having a concern of confrontation with another person. Confrontation is a baseline theme for him. And in my opinion, the reason why he's probably drawn into the industry that he's drawn is because he wants to understand himself and why he feels that way all the time.
That's interesting because I see that. Now that you mentioned it.
He goes through life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, fear and anticipation, confrontation. It's about to happen where? It's just a matter of where is it going to happen.
Really interesting.
It is actually.
Because I see
so
that
that's
in
his
him.
reality filter. So he seeks those things out, whether it's the lectures or the people
He
yelling
rehearses
and trying to cancel
and
them all that
prepares for them.
Yeah.
And always
That's
has.
fantastic.
My old business partner James was always, you remember him, I'm getting ready for a fight. And I was like, he was
Oh,
always,
God.
he would say that to me. Like when it was
James,
a
right.
rehab guy he was having a hard time with, guy he lent money to wasn't paying him back, or a guy he had hired to do something wasn't doing what he said. And he was like, he's all like, I'm getting ready for a fight, man. You know,
That's
that
how
was
I met
his
Corey.
whole
That's how I met
concept.
Corey, through James Wayne. That's our mutual friend. By the way, so I've known you. I didn't realize you've known each other so long. I've known you a little bit longer.
Yeah.
What was it, 2002?
99.
99.
Wow.
You want to go more into Jordan Peterson or leave it at that?
No, keep going.
Okay. So back to Jordan Peterson thing. Another pattern that he's showing up is the area of C2 and C1 articulation. So C1 in occiput has a lot to do with fear and anticipation. I had a gentleman come into the office years ago who drew animation back when they used to draw it. Now it's probably all on computers, right? So I asked him, I said, hey, when you're drawing a cartoon character and an animation, can you draw the posture and have your audience have an impression as to the character, the personality, the persona of that drawing, without the person ever speaking, without the cartoon person ever speaking, but just from the shape position of it. He says, absolutely. He says, that's the epitome of cartoons, that you draw the posture and positioning so that your audience has an impression as to what this character is about. Is he a leader? His chest is up, head back, right? Is he deceptive? He's got a twist to his spine. Is he fearful? His head is forward and they're crouched a bit. So he says, how I draw the position of that character that I'm drawing, the audience has a total impression of this character. Can I trust him? Can I not trust him? Is he angry? Is he happy? Is he a leader? Is he submissive? From the posture. So literally,
That's really interesting stuff.
When I look at Jordan Peterson, if we're talking about him, there's obvious tension for sure. I know I'd be working with that. C1 occiput, which is fear and anticipation, fear of the future, confrontation. From what he's communicating, he also has a challenge with the C1 and C2 vertebra. That's autoimmune or emotional hijack, or for some people, it's a little bit of both. If it's expressed, addictive personality, emotional volatility. But again, that's if it's expressed. If it's internalized, because at an early age, the environment would not tolerate that emotional explosiveness. Instead, they internalize it. So now what do you got? Now you have autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid, autoimmune disorders.
This is amazing. I think that's very interesting.
And
that's really
ironically, he's communicated that within his own family. And fortunately, they've had some help, and they've been able to find some relief from the aches and pains his daughters had from making dietary changes and others. But his family would have massive improvements in their health if I were, or a practitioner who does similar work would work with those areas within a very short amount of time. He would be shocked as to turnaround with their health. Another pattern that he displays is a lot of tailbone. Excuse me. Lemony. I had lemon water.
How do you see that? How do you see?
If you're going to do that, you may as well have fun with it.
I can understand this part. You can see it very clearly, but I'm always wondering how you see it.
Yeah. So if you've ever seen a dog with the head down and tail tucked between the legs, so what's going on with the dog, Brian? So it's great having Brian here because he doesn't know much about me or what I do.
No.
So if you were to see a dog with the head down, tail tucked between the legs, describe what's going on with the dog. Large and in charge or defeated?
Yeah, fearful.
Fearful. Defeated. Would you say that they feel supported or suppressed?
Yeah, not supported.
Right. So the tailbone between the legs is the patterning that everything with the spine goes into when they feel dishonored, when they feel suppressed. The head goes down, again, feeling defeated. And depending on which vertebra, how they position the head tells me what it's linked with. So tailbone is when you take everything personally, and everything's a personal attack. So Jordan Peterson, when someone comes at him, he takes it personally first and funnels it up through fear of confrontation. So it's taking everything personally, funneling up through fear. So that's his go-to. The lower neck comes in when he feels betrayed, and it's all for an anger pattern. So he takes things personally, gets fearful, gets pissed off, and then intellectualizes it, right? Or within a split second, intellectualizes it and says, okay, what is this? So he's used his mind to take what he feels and translates that into a proper response.
That's amazing. The thing is, I've seen enough Jordan Peterson to...
You can see that.
I wouldn't have been able to articulate it, but now that you've described it, it's like I'm just seeing videos of him as you're describing that. There was one college student who must have had a transcript of everything Jordan Peterson has ever said. and he was critiquing or I can't even remember exactly what the content was, but he was challenging Jordan Peterson on a lot of points. And Jordan Peterson came back pretty quickly, and the first thing he did, he I don't know if he didn't come back defensively, but the first thing he did was compliment how good of a job he did. As a student, as a professor to the student.
He did his homework.
Yeah, right? As a professor to the student. In fact, that was his exact quote. Good job, by the way, he said. Good job, by the way. And I answered him graciously. I don't know. I think he evaded some of it and corrected him on some of it, but maybe owned some of it.
So Jordan Peterson's gift with that phase, and phase 5 is when you have a tension pattern that engages both top and bottom. A lot of people have tension pattern in their neck or they have a postural tension distortion or in their low back or their sacral area. But Jordan has distortion at top and bottom. People who have that pattern, they were born, but they don't feel like they've been fully embodied. And if they focus on themselves, they have no energy. They fatigue very quickly. It's as if there's no life in their body. When they focus on contribution on large scales, they have energy for days.
Well, what are your thoughts? Because this might relate to what you're saying. What are your thoughts? Jordan Peterson, to me, is where it gets to where this is what drew me in, and it relates to the debate he had with Sam Harris and the rabbit trail I went on after that. But Jordan Peterson admitted in an interview that it took him years to figure out how he can still embrace some. And what type of his Christian faith and what form it takes in light of all of his higher education. And it took him years to struggle with, and I think he used Carl Jung's stuff. Carl Jung had a lot of, some people think that might be where Carl Jung split off from Freud, because Carl Jung is pretty obviously not an atheist. And he has things in some of his writings that, in fact, I studied some Carl Jung stuff in college on his interpretation of the Book of Job, and he covered those topics. So, but Jordan Peterson, I've seen him attacked. I've seen people that, not only Sam Harris, but other atheists, come out and challenge him and say, "Are you a religious man?" You know, and he has a nervous way of dealing with that. The thing you're talking about him being ready to be attacked on the defense, it seems like it's in that area, like that area.
Unfortunately, it goes through that pattern first, but he's learned to allow that, but to revert or divert that energy differently. But it's still, that's his visceral response first. And the gift that network care offers, and I think the reason why Corey's such a big fan of it, is it takes that pattern and helps you learn to manage it differently and get to the gift. So every pattern has its curse, right? The wounds part of it that come with it. But every pattern also has its extreme gifts. And what Jordan Peterson has been able to do is, even though he has that filter where he fear and anticipation, fear of confrontation, and taking things to heart much more personally than they were, rather than understanding that things that people say has more to do with who's saying it, has little to do with who they say it to. But when your tailbone is tucked under, it was about self, you know? But being able to decrease that self, making it about self, but instead being able to show up for the other person and realize that things that people say, it has to do with who's saying it. Getting the consciousness exercises with the pattern that he has, in addition to getting network care, he would be even more liberated from that reality filter than he has been able to do, which he's done a great job on his own through his own work. But network care would allow his physiology to shift even more so than he's already taken it.
Well, in one of the debates with Sam Harris, he asked him the question, does he believe that Jesus Christ resurrected from the dead? And Sam Harris also, he said, I want to say, first of all, I'm not attacking here. He said he's somewhat open to the answer, maybe it being him being into quantum physics and things, that there could be some clever answer as to how a phenomenon like that could have happened. But Jordan Peterson went on and on and on and on for like, he would say, well, I could give a sermon on that lasts for 20 hours. He said that, and he gave a long. Jordan
Peterson did?
Yeah, he'll respond like, well, I could do a whole dissertation on that alone. And he basically took a long, not brief at all, just took a long time and didn't really come around and answer it anyway, even given the long response. And Sam Harris said, see, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I would hope for an answer something like, most likely not, or something very brief. But I think he has a hard time dealing with the religious thing when approached by educated people that are atheists.
Well, so if I could share from the gift that I think I bring to the table, a different perspective, is people that have high tension and structural rigidity, they don't feel safe, especially with a phase 5 pattern where the distortion is top and bottom. They don't feel safe. They have a high need for safety and constancy and control. And my personal experience has been that people that come into our office that have a more loose religion, I just believe in everybody should love each other and meditate and do some yoga. It's not necessarily defined as you do this on this day, this on that day, and then you have 14 days before this, and then you do that. Like they have all these structured rules. The more free-flowing their religious practice, the more safety they seem to have in their body as a baseline. The clients that come into the office say, well, it's not on Sunday isn't the holy day, it's Saturday is the holy day, and you have to pray from this time to this time, and then you have to do this many of these and this many of those, and you have to read so many of Torahs, then you have to wear your hair a certain way, and you have to dress a certain way, and then you can't drive a car at certain. The more controlled and structured the religion that they seem to resonate with, those people have significantly less safety and peace in their body. And they need the rules almost as if the rules provide safety because they don't have it internally, so they seek it outward.
So I do have a question for you. When you mentioned like Jordan Peterson, has a certain stage 5, you mentioned.
Well,
So-
phase 5 pattern, which
Okay,
means
so-
basically the distortion between the top part of the spine and the bottom part of the spine.
So is that something that he had since he was born, or did he got it with all the media pressure?
He was
all
born with
that.
that pattern, and he
But-
likely his parents have that pattern and modeled that pattern. So, to going off on a tangent, what I think you're asking was the pattern because he feels he's gotten beat up from what's been, the way that people.
He has a
I've
lot
seen
of pressure.
interviews.
He has a
I've seen
lot of
interviews
pressure.
where this guy is like the interviewer. There's when you think of an interview, you think of, hey, they want to talk to me and find out my perspective and my insights. There's interviews with Jordan Peterson, and I'm like, this guy had an agenda to tear your ass apart
What
from
about
one
the
end to the
what
other.
about the interview you had with that woman, the British one?
Which one? He's had
Oh,
several.
but this one's the most famous one of all. This one,
interviews are
she
hostile.
just attacked. This was the worst one. I
And-
can't remember her name, unfortunately.
And I give credit for the guy for just staying in the room because they were straight up. They had a strategy. They read his stuff, and everything that they read, everything that they seen of Jordan Peterson's was ammunition for how could they possibly attack him and discredit him. It wasn't to say, hey, where is when he said that? Where is that true? And where do I feel challenged by that? And where do I have questions about that? And let's get his personal insight and a broader picture of that. No, they didn't come from that. They came from how could I discredit him? How could I attack him? And to Jordan Peterson's credit, he's showing up increasingly from the videos that I've seen more and more and more polished and less and less triggered. So hats off to you, Jordan. You
Oh,
did
really?
well.
Really? That's interesting.
I think in that situation, those type of interviews, they have an agenda. But you really want to know like a real one-on-one interview with the Joe Rogan interview with Joe, that's one of the best because you see like a real interaction. Not
So it's like I want to get the wisdom. I want to get the
Yeah.
gift that this guy brings to the table from his insights and his perspective. That's what I classically think of an interview as compared to what Luis was just saying. Some things that they title as an interview, but the reality is they're attacking this person as a human being and their motivation in life. I think that's vicious. And there's the masculine part of me says, no, stay there and prove them, stay in the fight. And the other part of me says, why would you ever want to deal with that bullshit? Just get your shit and leave.
Or you do what Elon Musk does, where he doesn't really interview with mainstream media. He'll do like he just did a podcast recently with somebody that he promoted on Twitter. He's like, hey, follow this guy. He's got really great talks, podcasts, or whatever. And so he goes to alternative media, and you even see Mark Zuckerberg starting to do that now. That he's talking to people that he knows and using social media to get his message out instead of trying to go through the gatekeepers of the media.
Bill Gates has been doing that for years.
Well,
Every
Bill Gates is
time-
always on CNN and push. He's always
He
on
gets
TV.
interviewed by people that he already knows is fond of his
Yeah.
views and his agenda. I have never seen Bill Gates actually do an interview where someone asked any pressing questions as to why are you doing this and why are you doing that and why do you think you can play God with the weather and people's livelihoods and their food supply? Like I've never seen an
Yeah, it's
interview
like
ask
also,
that.
why is the dude on TV as an expert for vaccines and stuff?
He's a
not
computer
scientist.
guy. He's not a
He's a
scientist.
computer geek. So it's like, why? What? Just because he took his billions and
It has to
put it in the
capital.
pharmaceutical industry and invested in all these companies. Now they're going to have him on, and he's giving people advice like he's some kind of credible expert
That's why
just because he
when
spent his money.
I always remember when I went to college, I had a professor that he always told us, I don't want you to get A's in my class. All I want you to do is that when you come out of my class, you will be able to see in the media what is right and what is wrong, so you can analyze that yourself.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
The job of education is not to fill a
Exactly.
mind, it's to take a closed mind and open it.
Exactly. You need to be aware. Whenever I see the media, I always, as underline, they're saying some lie unless I verify it. I need to verify it first with other sources and then make my own.
Well, you have busy
informed
evenings because
decision.
most of the stuff that you hear on news is bullshit.
It's like you got to think like a critical perspective. Are these people telling the truth, or they have something they want me to think? What
Right,
is
they're
it?
trying to influence you rather than inform you.
When I don't have time for that, I have other things to do.
Yeah,
so.
that's why almost nobody's watching the news.
Yeah.
What is
so-
it? I think Corey was sharing with me the other day that Joe Rogan has more views than CNN
He
does.
has a
and-
bigger audience than CNN. So what he was talking about when they talked about the horse tranquilizer thing and they were blasting that out
So funny.
24/7, Joe was like, I have a bigger audience than you guys. It's not like, because the media is used to going around destroying people. They can't fight back, people that don't have a big audience. Whereas they go after somebody like Joe Rogan, who actually has a bigger audience, and he can easily crush them, basically, and rebut them.
No wonder I couldn't remember her name. I mean, I put it up on
Oh, yeah,
YouTube. They don't even mention her. I can't even find her name on this, but that's the one I was talking about. That interview.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
That's
Do
the
you
one where
remember?
he said where she threw something at him and he shared with her a different perspective of something about being called out. And
Yeah,
then
well,
he said, well, it's important for that we banter back and forth because then that's how you get
Like you're doing with me right now.
Yeah, that's what you're doing
And
with me
then
right now.
She was just, yeah.
Because that's how you get to what's really behind it. Yes, I think it had to do with saying things to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah,
rather than
right.
being
He
open
says,
honest with them.
you're making
Freedom
me
of
feel
speech.
uncomfortable, which what you should be doing.
If there's no uncomfort, there's no growth.
Comfort zone's where you're most uncomfortable.
He said that
most.
before the camera was rolling, everything was just completely cordial. And as soon as it started, she started the attack.
Yeah, did you ever
It was
see
designed
the,
to catch him off
what's
guard.
her name? Megan Kelly, the one who used to work at Fox. And
The one that Trump destroyed.
well, yeah, that. And then she was, she interviewed Alex Jones. And just Alex recorded all of her messages and the interview. And he played them back. And you could hear this ass kissy, oh, I think you've just been misunderstood. She's real nice and sweet. To get him on an interview. And
She's
then
setting him up.
Yeah, exactly. Just setting him up. Being, devious and just a total dirtbag. So most of these.
And then now she's trying to build her career back up with her own bull show and this and that.
Self-emulated it.
Yeah, Trump brought an interesting perspective to the media. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't like some things that Trump did. I could tell you one of the things that Trump did is he really illuminated the BS. He illuminated the manipulation to the point where you could see bits and pieces of it at different times, and we always have, like, oh yeah, see, they're kind of like wordsmithing this a little bit. Trump just put a torch under that and just illuminated it so much so that the things that commentators say now, it's so much more obvious, almost to the point now where as an American consumer, we're not so ignorant of it and we're not willing to cover it up. But now we've seen so much of it that now we almost assume that everything that they're saying has an agenda and they're pushing something.
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost as if there's a lack of integrity and there's a lack of trust by the mainstream media, by the consumer.
Yeah.
So I just assume it's bullshit. So I don't even watch it anymore because there's so many of the times when I was hoping that they would say something that was straightforward, that was believable, but consistently the major news outlets show, don't trust me, we are full of shit.
Well, it's an interesting perspective. I mean, I'm sorry that you watch that stuff.
They destroyed their own industry.
I don't watch it, so whenever I hear people talk about what the media's feeding them, I feel like left out because I don't watch that. I don't even have public television.
It makes you wonder over the years, how long has this deception been going on? And I think
Like the Gulf of Tonkin, the whole the whole reasons why we got into the Vietnam War was all based on bullshit.
And-
Something that didn't actually even happen.
The further back you look, the more examples you see of how the media was really just an avenue and a tool to manipulate the American people and put a spin on whatever agenda. And the agenda was dictated by who wrote the biggest check.
Well, the thing is, I've always been a skeptic, I think. So I start off being a skeptic. So I guess I'm less likely to have that awakening of, oh my God, I've been tricked all this time, because I start off skeptical.
There's no more room for the naive in our culture.